Hi everyone and welcome to Fridays with Fenning. Now, a number of years ago, a man called George Snyman left his job in South Africa and he decided to walk across Africa. And what he saw made him so angry. Africa's youth were left struggling to find their purpose and identity in communities ravished by severe health, social and economic problems. Millions were left without parents and other adult caregivers because of the AIDS pandemic and therefore without role models. And many of these young people had become HIV positive themselves through lack of education, but mostly through a lack of self-esteem and purpose. Africa was being stripped of its leaders from every aspect of government, industry, family and community life. And this is what stirred George into action. Hands at Work, the organisation that he started off the back of that long walk, it basically works with the most vulnerable communities, providing education, healthcare and food for the children and young people, as well as doing home-based visits to child-led families where both parents have died and those being cared for by grandparents. And I've seen firsthand the difference they're making, and it is so good. And it all started from an anger that burned deep inside George at the injustice he'd seen, and that anger motivated him to make a difference. Now, anger is a powerful emotion and can be such a driving force for good. We see it here today regarding racial injustice. Premier League players kneeling before each game in solidarity for kick out racism and the Black Lives Matter movement. And anger can be a motivating force for making something better. But actually, if we're honest, more often than not, anger is an emotion that at its heart, it's destructive and harmful and dangerous. Anger destroys trust and relationships. It causes fights and it makes us say things that we regret. Anger can explode, it can be suppressed and hold grudges, and it festers away under the surface, causing bitterness and a lack of peace. Which is why the early church fathers included anger or wrath in the list of the 7 deadly sins. Let me ask you, when were you last angry? Now, for some of us, that's a really easy question to answer. But for others, it's much harder because we bury it. We feel it's wrong to be angry, but it's not. Jesus got angry when he saw the money changers in the temple abusing their position and taking advantage of the poor and the outsiders. But anger can be dangerous because often it's those closest to us or those that we happen to come into contact with that gets the brunt of our anger. Ever come home angry and it's then affected family life? Serena Williams' outburst in the final of the US Open just a couple of years ago wasn't just about the referee. It's a lifetime of battling against racial and gender abuse that just bubbled over in that moment. And sometimes we even take our anger out on ourselves, that, we come to hate ourselves, to hurt ourselves, to stop believing in our value. I visited Teen Challenge, which is a Christian rehab centre, a few years ago, where 2 people, Nathan and Vinny, had just finished the programme and they were given their awards and they were being prayed for before going home. And both were asked what they'd learnt most through the studies over the past 10 months. And both said that they'd learnt to love and accept themselves and to believe in themselves again. Now, both had arrived as angry young men who had abused their bodies through drugs and alcohol. Now, you see, anger, if internalised, can be so destructive. So how can we know what's good anger and bad anger? Usually it's just by the outworking of our anger, of what that anger is focused on. So George Snyman's anger wasn't directed at a person or people. It was at injustice, something that God feels very strongly about. And charities are founded and laws are changed and lives are improved when anger is directed at fixing a problem. But bad anger doesn't bring anything good. It cripples relationships, it causes estrangements, and it stops us from experiencing peace, and it keeps us stalled and stops us from moving forward in life. Being angry doesn't justify cruel behaviour. But listen, it's okay to feel angry. Anger is a human emotion that isn't to be suppressed. It's okay to express it, but to express it safely. It's interesting that rage rooms are up and set up around the country where you can physically break things, smash things with a baseball bat as a safe release to anger. We're not to bottle it up, but to express it safely, often maybe to a friend or to a counsellor. That anger isn't to be suppressed, but it is to be understood. So what's the way forward? How can we stop anger from taking root in our lives? Well, first of all, we need to be honest and identify the cause of our anger. Now, often we blame our circumstances as being the source of the problem. The problem is out there. It's other people. But what I find interesting is that James, the brother of Jesus, says something very different. He asks this question in James chapter 4. He says this, "What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire, but you don't have." In other words, he's saying that the temptation is to believe that you get angry and we have relational problems because of the circumstances, because of those other people. But James is saying, look beyond that to what goes on within us. Our anger often stems from this internal conflict as we try to fight for happiness and contentment, for being right, for getting what I want. And our external conflicts are caused more often by an internal conflict that we just can't contain. Why do I get mad at someone? Well, there's something that I want and I can't have it, even if I deserve it. That's often the source of our anger. And angry people are angry because there is something that they want and they can't have it. And sometimes it's what we want is completely justified and sometimes it's not. Now, I know that this is really hard to admit. But see, if you can be brave and honest enough to stop blaming everyone else and really think about what you didn't get that you wanted and needed, because the starting point is to stop and reflect on what causes anger to take root. For some of us, this is just too big to do on our own. This may well need support of a friend or a counsellor by identifying the reason behind our anger. It's key to the process of finding healing. And secondly, we need to choose to forgive. That's a massive statement to make, I know. But I can hear people saying, you don't know what my parents were like to me. You don't know what they did to me at school, how lonely they made me feel or how deeply they hurt me. You're right, I don't know. And it will have been awful, and I'm really sorry that you've had to face such tough circumstances. But I also know that while you hang on to that anger and hurt, it will only hurt you. And it will only feed the seed of anger in you, allowing the smouldering to break out and bring destruction on you and others close to you. So please know that forgiving is not saying that what they did doesn't matter, because it did matter. And what they withheld from you was hurtful. It shouldn't have happened, but it did. But if you're holding on to anger, it doesn't put the situation right. Someone once said, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping that the other person dies. Forgiveness is a choice that we have to make over and over again. And it's never easy, and it's never a one-off decision. But it is the way to break the hold of anger in our lives and to find freedom and peace again. There's a brilliant video by Rob Bell that's part of the Numa series called Luggage that I'd highly recommend for you to watch on YouTube, as his insights around this topic are just brilliant and so helpful. Hey, thank you for watching today, and please do get in touch if I can help in any way regarding some of the stuff that I've talked through today. My email is steve.fenning@forgechurch.com. But I hope you have a great weekend, and thanks for watching, and you take care.